All right, good morning. My name is Andrew Browning, and welcome to the Extended Reality panel. I'm the Web Services Manager for the UCLA Office of Information Technology. OIT, helps bring ideas, campus and academic research programs ideas to life. And we all have really cool jobs because we get to play with some of the coolest new technology on a daily basis. And in doing so, we try to further UCLA's mission of research. This panel is going to talk about augmented reality, virtual reality, holograms, mixed reality, and we're going to sort of see where it takes us. And we'd like to know how these technologies are being used both in the research community and in industry. And so that's sort of what the panel is going to focus on today. So why don't each one of the panelists take a few moments to introduce themselves to the audience and sort of give us a background of where you're at with these technologies now. Güvenç, you want to start?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Güvenç Özel. I'm a lead faculty member and program advisor at UCLA IDEAS program, which is an initiative of the Architecture and Urban Design in order to create cross-disciplinary collaborations between students and professors and the industry. And my primary role in this department is to figure out ways in which we could academically and practically integrate new technologies into the built environment. The research that I conduct with a group of roughly 20 students for the last 3 to 4 years primarily focused on considering architecture as a cyber-physical system where there would be multiple actors, technological actors besides humans involved in the process, ranging from robotics to virtual and augmented reality to Internet of Things. I'm thinking about immersive environments that have a capacity to respond to human presence in an intelligent way. So we also look into potential applications of machine learning in a way to integrate into building systems. But a lot of the use of augmented and virtual reality for us is going beyond just using them as design tools, but actually thinking about them as a way to experience and interface with buildings and environments. Thank you.
Great. My name is Natasha French. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Ventana. We're an LA-based augmented reality company, and we've built a computing platform building both the hardware and software that basically focuses on interactive hologram displays. So for example, this entire panel could be in New York right now, and our holograms could be displayed here in real time, interacting with you guys. We've taken that technology a step further because a lot of our customers, you know, that wow factor was there, but our customers wanted to learn about the consumer. They wanted to learn what are people doing, what do they like. So we added an interactive component. So you can see yourself in real time as a hologram. Based on gesture controls, the software that we've written, you can interact with digital objects. So for example, you can design your dream car where you can pick the colors. After that experience, every user is sent an email with a video or GIF that they can share on social. So we can track all of that social listening, but in addition, we use facial recognition and can get all user demographics, age range, height, sentiment. Sentiment is a really key factor for what we're doing is for product preference. How are people reacting and responding? A lot of our clients, for example, Lexus, we've worked with, their leads have increased 1,800% using our technology in stadiums. Just a couple weeks ago, we integrated our AR with AI and we launched the first ever artificial intelligence hologram concierge. So you could actually ask this hologram questions and she can respond in real time, which I can talk about a little bit later.
Hi, I'm Philip Lewicki from Afternow. I'm the captain over there. And what we do is we are fairly focused on working with augmented reality glasses and spatial positioning cell phones like ARKit. And what's our core of the skills we have are related about user experience and design. And our kind of mission for us is to build the future user interface and user interactions that we will have when our physical world will be merged with our virtual world. So what does that mean is how will you be able to do your email when there is no computer and no cell phones? How that would look like? How would it feel? How would you interact like you're doing today in social for Facebook or Instagram? How would that feel when there is no more screens and it has to be merged in your world and it's integrated with your body as well as your space? So those are the questions we're asking and the answers we're working on. And we're focusing these days more on the workplace, how we are currently improving in different environments. So working with the Hyperloop to design a collaborative workspace for them to having their design team that are spread across probably 6 time zones to be able to work together and collaborate in that space around 3D designs, mock-ups, concepts, and have it more efficiently. And this is all merged into their space rooms. And our goal there is really to achieve through the workspace, and slowly as the technology matures and all the technology moves to our body, we'll be able to create that interface we're working on.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Emmanuel Masongsong, and I work in the Earth, Planetary, and Space Sciences Department here on campus. I'm a mechanical engineer. I'm working with a team of 40 undergraduates, and we're building UCLA's first satellite. So that's going to launch next fall, and that will have sensors on it that will augment our view of processes in space. So we'll be studying magnetic fields and particles churning around our near-Earth environment and how they cause the aurora. So that's one form of augmented reality we work on. And then I'm also a member of the educational demonstration for Geospace Engagement Lab. So we build educational demos for classroom use. So in the foyer, we have our augmented reality sandbox, which was developed at UC Davis, but we've further developed it, and we're adding new features to basically teach contour maps, basic geological processes, teach about watersheds, erosion, sea level rise, any number of things, and we're developing new applications for this sandbox where you can engage with different types of data, including space data, and then also moving into virtual reality where you can create a landscape and then put on a headset and then move within the landscape and see as water flows over you and different types of things like that. So, so we're also having an event November 5th where we'll showcase a lot of these demonstrations. And it's called Exploring Your Universe. It's November 5th, 12 to 5 p.m. And it's all over South Campus. And so we're really, it's really important to engage the public about the exciting things that we're doing here at UCLA, especially in Earth and Space Sciences. So I'm really happy to be here and talk about some of our educational endeavors. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Lisa Snyder, and I am the Director of Campus Research Initiatives for UCLA's Office of Information Technology and Institute for Digital Research and Education. And all of that's a very big mouthful for saying I herd a lot of cats or corral a lot of butterflies, trying to get people on campus to play well together. As a researcher, though, I work with real-time interactive computer technologies, and my specific focus is on applications for interactive computer simulations for teaching about architectural history and historic urban environments. So I personally build a lot of, in fact, that's like my favorite way to spend the day is just sitting and building things. As a researcher, I'm probably best known for reconstructions of Jerusalem's Temple Mount in Israel, the World's Columbian Exposition of 1893, which is a World's Fair held in Chicago, and Digital Karnak.
I'm Ben Sachs. I'm an interactive artist and a social entrepreneur. I'm also the founder of a project called Perceptoscope, which is basically what we do is we build what looks like coin-operated binoculars, but they do full field of view augmented reality. And then we partner with museums, historical sites, public spaces to help them engage with their visitors and tell their stories. And so I really see this as kind of a hybrid of a hardware startup, a public arts initiative, a creative placemaking initiative. But really our goal is to build an immersive and frictionless way for people to gain a better understanding of the places around them.
Excellent, thanks. I want to bounce off of Gigi's keynote real quick because I thought there were some pretty cool things in there. So this is sort of just a general question I'm going to toss out there and see who picks it up. Tim Cook said the other day, recently, that he's excited about AR because he can see uses for it everywhere that amplifies the human connection. However, he says that he's never been a fan of VR because it does the opposite. It isolates us. In his view, VR is not profound. Is he right? In his view, is VR limited? What do you guys think?
Yeah.
No.
I think,
Maybe.
yeah, in my opinion, that's mine. VR is a step toward what we call the mixed reality.
Right?
It's one of those little part of it. It's the end of that spectrum where you're totally occluded and you're into simulations. But the spectrum starts with reality and our physical world. And the mixed reality spectrum will go all the way through that. So VR is just one small one of it, where the spectrum is really large. So the way we're going to mix our virtual and our real world will be more through AR type of technology, where the two will be mixed. And some scenarios will work in a virtual one. And also on the technical side of things, I think VR initiated a lot and accelerated a lot of the technology we need for AR. But it's, in my opinion, a step toward the full mix of the two universe.
And I'll just add to that. So when we started the company 5 years ago, we really focused more on the group experience and kind of where we see AR, where, we've noticed, people, it's barely, they don't even want to pull out their cell phone, another thing, and our hardware displays enable you just standing there with gestures to do the experience where your friend next to you can be enjoying it just as much as you are and engaging more with you. So it's telling as a group story. However, there's places for VR and there's places for AR. If you really want to throw yourself and dive into that experience and be in that world, that's a place for VR, where AR is, we're putting that digital in our world and we're enhancing that experience using those different technologies. So kind of what we've done is focus on the idea where you don't have to put something else on, you don't have to pull something else out, because for the experiences that our customers are coming to us for, is they don't want to disrupt someone's, when they're walking through a venue or a museum, they're already dealing with a lot of simulations coming at you, or they just want that enhanced experience as opposed to kind of taking them away to put something on and then take them away from the full experience that they're in there at the museum or at the sports venue.
So if I understand this, that it's great as an ingredient for mixed reality, but maybe somewhat limited if we just use it as a one-dimensional or a tool by itself?
I would say there's also some industrial trends going on around VR right now connected to how it's become part of the entertainment industry, which is encouraging this notion that VR should be about spectacle. And I think that's the distinction with AR and VR, is that AR has to connect to the world around you, so it gives us an opportunity to view that form of immersive media more akin to, say, documentary. So I think there's a spectrum that exists between the both. You can have documentary VR, and that's connecting you to a new place and giving you a really personal experience of that place. But for the most part, the focus has been on how do we make Ghostbusters into a VR experience, and I think that's where the potentials of the medium are getting limited by kind of the scope.
A point of clarification, are you talking about VR in the strictest sense of the word with immersive headsets, haptics, etc., or are you talking 360 videos?
Oh, I'm thinking more in the strictest sense where it's a wearable and we have, we're fully immersed with a headset and perhaps even haptic sensors.
I'm actually interested, Gavel's was the voice that said no, it's not limited. What would you say to this question?
I think that the current augmented reality technology is very limited, and in fact it doesn't fit with the entertainment and the productivity routines that we have as a society. The cone of vision is very narrow, and the experience is not spatial, and in fact the way that we interact with environments do not align with the way that AR is designed. So, for example, I sit down as an architect pretty much 6 to 8 hours a day in front of the computer. I interact with other people through my phone, text messages. I'm limited to that screen. I think VR has a lot better potential to make that experience more spatial and less antisocial, in fact. compared to AR. I think AR is an aspirational technology in the sense that it will be at some point when the corner vision problem is solved, it could become an immersive and spatial potential. But in its current form, I think it is only going to be marketed for advertising. And it'll just make the world washed out with graphics of brands. And beyond that, I really don't see a kind of a spatial potential for it. Another part of the problem is that I think there's a separation in terms of work time versus social time. For example, when you go to the movie theater or when you go to, let's say, have dinner with a friend or some kind of other kind of social engagement, you probably don't want to be immersed in that virtual world anymore. You probably want to actually, in fact, organize your time to interact with a human in a way that you can. And but I would say the best potential of AR is, in fact, making objects smarter and allowing objects to announce their presence and their functionality in the environment in its current form. Other than that, I actually don't think that pulling out your form and augmenting something is a productive way of interacting with the environment.
So, Guvench, if we drill down on that a little bit, given VR and AR's potential to change the way buildings and structures are designed, do you feel that the way that we live in those structures will also change? And if so, what do you think some of the more striking changes will look like?
I think there's obviously a kind of a philosophical dimension to this entire conversation, and that primarily originates from what we understand as human experience. So far, human experience has been primarily limited to the physical world as a kind of a sensorial experience. And as a society, I would imagine that we have started to prioritize our vision more than any other senses in the last 80 years or so. So in a way, we are preparing for a future that allows us to interact with the environment primarily with our vision. But we are limited by the laws of physics, so to say, to create a certain kind of way in which we can interact with those environments. So I would say that there are certain limitations to the way in which we interact with each other socially and interact with environments in the physical world. So in that regard, I think VR opens up a new species of buildings, a new species of environments that are not any longer limited by some of the conventions of architectural design, like permanence, gravity, or any other form of, I would say, environmental dogmas that I think are in a way limiting. But just going back to a very practical paradigm, which is about allowing AR to embed information into the environment that can be revealed at a moment that it needs to be, I think that is an incredibly huge potential. For example, you could embed structural sensors into the concrete of a building, and they could measure and announce the structural stability of a building after an earthquake. And by walking through the space with an augmented reality headset, you can detect damage, right? You can make very specific technologies that I think have a huge amount of potential to improve the existing condition of the building industry. But I think the real paradigm shift, at least for architectural experience, as I like to call it, is going to come from complete subversion of what we consider to be architecture and physical environments.
Thank you. So Natasha, I think that holograms, right, are sort of a bigger part of this idea of mixed reality, and I think that will sort of become part of our daily lives too, and sort of how we interact with the spaces that we live in. And so with respect to holograms, one of the challenges that people have experiencing human replicas that are almost but not quite human is the uncanny valley. What techniques can we use to leverage interactive holograms in a way that makes people feel comfortable and willing to engage in them?
Yeah, and that's a great question, and especially since we just last week we were in New York with our new AI hologram, and we had one that was very futuristic for that particular reason, and I think it comes down to that emotional connection. And so by us adding that sentiment analysis where you could walk up to it, and if she feels that you're distressed, can respond to that and answer a question where, if it's a distressed child that comes up to her, becomes emotionally connected, and it's adding that element of it. That's one element of it where you can make it very futuristic, where, we've had requests where, they want a sports player to be that person talking to you and welcoming them into the stadium. And so if you're able to shoot someone and turn them into a hologram, which we do, and it's that physical person, again, it's adding that emotional connection too and that interactive piece. So, you want to make that consumer or that user feel comfortable. So, we we can take any avatar and turn that into a hologram. I think for us, we've worked with, we've turned a lot of individuals into holograms, whether it's executives or it's celebrities or it's athletes. And you have that one, it's about the content and the story that you're telling with the hologram. And I think that's very key when we work with a lot of our, brands that come to us or educational. We know we're at the Pro Football Hall of Fame where we have former coaches giving you pep talks. And again, it's that storyline. Why are you interacting with them and what story are they telling you? I don't know if you guys have heard about the project where they're preserving Holocaust survivors. And so that's going to be in a museum where you actually can ask them questions and they can respond back to you. So in 50 years, that's still an option, but it's adding that element of emotion and response. So I think, we always, when clients come to us, we bring that up. Literally, that's been a part of my conversation for the past 3 weeks of that element of it. And I think we always say, what is the goal of the experience and who is your audience? And how is that audience going to respond to the actual hologram? And I think that's really important because if you put something up there that people are scared of, some people that's really creepy even when it's futuristic, but it's adding an element of comfortability where she can welcome you or he can welcome you in, and then it opens up a conversation of warmth. And then that's kind of the same time when you meet someone for the first time, you're always kind of, what's that first thing you say to them? So it's making sure you add that emotional element to it. And I think the sentiment analysis is going to be a huge part of those holograms that we're creating and making people want to respond to them and want to talk to them.
Awesome. Philippe, let me get rid of my pen here, pardon me. So with respect to mixed reality and maybe including some aspect of the holograms, how specifically can mixed reality make the workplace more productive? And in doing so, does it create more opportunities for people in the workforce during a time in which many people fear that automation and technology will reduce employment opportunities? I mean, if we're productive in the workplace and we're using augmented reality and VR and even holograms, what do you think the social impact of that is?
I'm going to start first with the different aspect of using, and I'll focus only on the augmented reality side of things, so I can counter-argument here, on the practical sense of it, and how AR today is used in the workplace. So I have to disclose Afternow is a Microsoft partner, so we have a close access to the project they've been working on and the early project in augmented reality for the workplace, because technologies Microsoft are pushed for the workplace. But before that, and their AR glasses mainly, but before that, Apple, from the interview with Tim Cook, Apple released the AR kit, and that's an evolution forward in AR for the mobile phone. Out of that, we just released at the same time as iOS 11 one application for filmmaker. And we've been working on it on other platforms before, but when the ARKit came, we found out the best way of using it. And the applications enable filmmakers to prepare their scene. So really fast, they pull up the phone in a location, and they can place characters, objects, and start choosing their camera, their lenses, and start framing as if they had their real camera and the real people in the room. And at that point, they can take screenshots and create little storyboards and provide all that information to the crew. They love it, and they're working with it, and we get amazing response out of this application because it saved them so much time. in preventing blocking, in preventing, in preparing the scene for the next day for the crew. So this is like real value of productivity for them to get things done faster. I don't think that will have a major social impact on this one, but in terms of changing the workplace, because it doesn't remove any jobs for anyone, I don't think so. But it's something that makes a job that we're doing before on paper and on flat drawings much better and much more efficient and really fast. So that's just with the cell phone, and that's a very practical use of their cell phone for that. Now, where we really see a change in the workplace is with the AR glasses. So the AR glasses like the HoloLens, for example, or the DAC Real sets, or the ODG R7, or even the Meta 2 from MetaVisions, those are really products that you can buy today. And those devices enable you to really mix the virtual and the real world, and you're hands-free. So at this point, it's like having your cell phone on your head, and also, you know, a see-through display. And here, the practical use we're seeing, one of the most, in the use case we've been coming across us, and are the main ones are construction and design. Architecture and constructions are avid users of those technology. On construction site, for example, they would use the HoloLens to set up walls and ply walls. So based on the CAD drawings and the design, they have a frame that appears in front of them, and they can visualize those frames and then just place the beam, the small aluminum beams where they should be without having to measure on the floor with a tape and numbers. Those appear, and they're pretty accurately to the half a centimeter, so they can place them really fast, and they can get their job done much faster. It's the same person, it's the same skills, it's just getting his job done faster and can do more of that work. Also, we got approached recently for landscape company that needed help for visualizing garden sculpture. A massive garden sculpture with sculpture that would be 30 feet, 30 feet tall. So those are very expensive to move around, so they want to be able to visualize them in 3D before doing it. So if you want to get a sense of, the last one is car manufacturers. We get a lot of car manufacturers approaching us for the factory lines as well as for preparing the designs of those elements. So in the industry, those glasses today are in the process of actually being actively used. And they're still in like proof of concept mode, and they're not deployed to the entire workforce, but that's just a matter probably of a year from now for having a massive amount of the workforce in construction, in manufacturing, as well as in healthcare, to start wearing head-mounted display and AR glasses for their work on a daily basis. Now, on the social impact of it, I'm biased, so don't take my word for it, but I see those are augmenting individual person at their current job. They still need their architectural skills, they still need the medical skills they have. It's just a better tool. It's like a better computer or a faster cell phone, more than something that's disrupting more radically the entire way the workforce will work. Like, for example, AI. Well, AI can replace entire bodies of roles in a company. So I think that's more an augmentation than an improvement. But again, I'm probably totally biased in that sense.
Okay, Lisa, you have a thought.
Yeah, Philippe, can I ask you a devil's advocate question?
Yeah,
Can you comment a little bit about the research about multitasking? That, you know, those kind of pop-ups on your computer distracting, you're less efficient when you're getting information from multiple sources. How does that play out with augmented reality glasses?
So far, the augmented reality glasses project we worked on are very specific. Mm-hmm. So it's not like your cell phone where you have notification popping up all the time. They're inside an application that's designed for a very specific purpose. So there's very few distraction. And it's part of the design that we work on to make sure that they're not distracted, that their work is really focused. So for example, it's about getting instruction to assemble machinery of a specific kind. the instruction will be step by step directly to what they're supposed to assemble or put together, or wire a panel. For example, ThyssenKrupp, the elevator company, have invested a lot into those glasses and their applications, a lot about remote assisting someone into wiring or fixing an elevator. Because an expert on elevators is very expensive, and it's very expensive in time to fly them, and their metric is how long an elevator is not working. That's, they need elevators to be 100% of the time working, and the shorter they can get an elevator not working and fixing it fast is important. So they send people that are not the top experts, but they have those glasses that remote connect someone that can send them instructions on where they should look at. So that's part of the designs of those devices and their applications, to make sure that you don't give distractions in the visual fields, and you can stay really focused into what they're supposed to do in their task. So it's more about the UX design in that sense.
Thank you. Emmanuel, NASA is experimenting with augmented reality for maintenance efficiency gains on the space station currently. What does the future of augmented reality look like with respect to the future of the space station and space exploration, and basically, in your research in space physics?
Okay. Well, our research focuses on invisible magnetic fields and space plasmas, which infiltrate 99.99% of the universe. So my goal from starting in this job 6 years ago was to convey the excitement and the complexity and the dynamics of what's happening outside of our planet, especially with respect to the sun and solar storms, because those can affect our electrical grid and our satellite infrastructure. Early on, like three-dimensional representations of this type of data were really important for researchers, but also for conveying to the public how a lot of these phenomena are moving in 3 dimensions in large scales around our planet. So I think it's really important for virtual reality and augmented reality to basically provide a means to access this type of information, because it's beyond our experience. It's not even something that you can imagine a lot of times. So I think that giving this sort of window into a different reality, so it's a extra augmented reality, is really important. So as far as research is concerned, a lot of these data sets that people work with are transformed graphically or into like linear tables and just whatever, like bar graphs and things like that. So to be able to take complex information that's changing by the second in multiple dimensions and different scales, I think will really empower the next generation of researchers so that they can start to understand things that are happening around our planet. So we like to, our slogan is explaining the invisible. So now that we can take this information and make it accessible, I think that's really revolutionary. And as far as education in space sciences, it seems like a lot of this stuff is new as far as augmented reality. And the fact that we can now customize it, that's really important, because before you'd get a product and you basically use it for as it was designed by someone else, but now a lot of this new open source technology in AR and VR lets us take something that someone else developed, as in the AR sandbox, for example, from UC Davis, and now we can develop new applications for it. We can change different parameters that they had given us and custom tailor them to our educational environment. So there's so many different ways of using this new technology. I like to think of it as sort of the revolution in multimedia, when like Encarta and different embedded videos and things was just like such a huge deal that it's exponentially more important now that people have information at their fingertips, and as soon as they can start to project things and visualize them either through the screen or through headsets, that's really going to make people be able to access more scientific information and be more engaged about the environment and climate change and things that are happening in space, especially with more space exploration. So it's really exciting.
Awesome. Lisa, so Emmanuel is talking about seeing the invisible, right? And part of your research is modeling historic environments, and in some ways those are invisible, right? We have portions of them that we can see, right? But portions of them that we're trying to reconstruct. And I wonder, what does the next generation of modeling look like vis-a-vis mixed reality, and what new insights might researchers and students gain from that experience with respect to modeling of historic environments?
It's a tough question. I'm going to have to say it depends. You know, one of the big challenges of the type of work I do, which is painstakingly trying to reconstruct environments that no longer exist and helping people understand them through the ability to navigate through them. So part of the act of modeling is really obsessive, very obsessive. You sit for hours agonizing over a textual description of, you know, the paint color of, you know, this building or that building, or the placement of this particular piece of cornice. So it all depends. If you think about learning and the learning process, are you thinking a teacher-centered presentation where they might use this type of technology? Are you thinking about a student-centered engagement where they may build this type of reconstruction model and learn from that kind of constructivist exercise? Or are you thinking about an environment that you want to provide to students to explore on their own and learn about from their own? So the answer to the question is it so depends on your learning objectives, what you're really trying to teach, and if that process is important, what expectations do you have about the outcomes? I will say that in the 20 plus years I've been doing this, there's been a shift from people interested in doing the manual modeling, the obsessive compulsive part, to saying, oh, look, I can take my phone and photograph this microphone. Yay, I can make a 3D model of this microphone. Well, okay, what's the benefit there? And so the question is the learning objective. If you're trying to teach students to be facile with new technologies and leap in and do something fun with 1, 2, 3D catch is one thing. But if you're trying to teach them about a historic learning environment or a historic space or a building, it's another. And I'll have to say I work with a very conservative group of people, teachers, right, students, and I think a lot about return on investment. I think a lot about efficiency. I think about what is the best use of a technology and what can that technology do that no other technology can do for less money or less investment. So I suspect I'm a bit of a Luddite in this respect, but I would love you guys to challenge me on kind of the educational applications.
Well, I think Ben's got a little background on this too. So Ben, Perceptoscope experience uses mixed media to overlay objects on top of real-world objects, right, through a pair of sort of, not to make it sound reductive, coin-op binoculars, right?
Yeah.
Can we use this technology to overlay portions of historic urban environments on top of their modern counterparts? And if so, what can we learn from that experience?
Yeah, absolutely. That's really one of the big goals of the project, and I think Lisa's work is a good example of kind of where my drive for this comes from too. I've done a lot of work as a documentarian around the history of the city and how the city grew up to be what it is. And through the course of urban development, we destroy a lot of important community assets. So the question is, how can we create a new way to experience those things we've lost? And to me, this was a cool mode to do it because it's something we're all familiar with, it's something that's nostalgic, and I can provide a really fluid and immersive AR experience that's not possible with a wearable. So for me, a lot of the goals of this project are kind of to think of it like a time machine. How can we go backwards in time, both to prehistoric history, geologic history, but also forward in time? How can we project forward to what this neighborhood could look like, what type of architecture might be on this site, but really think of a way to do it in a fluid way that can be communicated to everyday people in that space. And it doesn't require a lot of overhead or apps to download or walking around with your phone in front of you, because I think that's really distancing. So that's really the goals of the project, are to communicate that idea of time existing beyond us. Yeah.
Lisa.
Okay, so we should hook up.
Yeah, obviously.
But not in the millennial sense of the word, not just kind of have a meeting.
Yeah.
But this point's a challenge, especially for an educational market. So my reconstruction model of the World's Columbian Exposition of 1893, held in Chicago, doesn't exist. The park exists. It's there. But for a student, AR works if you're on site, right? It doesn't necessarily work for someone sitting in a classroom here at UCLA because they don't have that luxury. So I think if you look back to the early taxonomies of AR and VR, my work falls to the augmented virtuality space from Paul Milgram, right? Where we're looking at, in the same way that AR is looking at augmenting physical space, we're looking at augmenting virtual space. So if I give an environment to a student, I want them to have essentially the same experience, that they're navigating rather than walking. And as they approach something, you get a pop-up. It tells you what it is. It gives you more information. It gives you photos of the original. It gives you photos of what exists there now.
Yeah.
And so it's roughly the same experience. So I'll give you my card.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and I think also that's a good example of why mixed reality is really the best way to think of all of these modalities, because for the case of somebody who's trying to do a recreation of a site that you can't personally access, there's no reason that experience can't be delivered as a VR experience. And so we have to kind of think of it as a broader spectrum that you can, and even with perceptoscope experiences, everything that I build on a perceptoscope can be translated and experienced on a mobile device as a web VR experience or on a headset afar. So really we have to think of this all as one big thing, and you just have access to certain types of it at different periods of time, if that makes sense.
Interesting. Okay, I think we have time for one more question. Then will we have time to? All right, let's open up questions. Does anybody in the audience have questions of the panelists? And then we can run the mics around for anybody who has one. In the back.
This question has to do with the wearables, and I had an opportunity to put on one of the Daiquiri headsets or goggles, and it's great. And I think that it's how they're using it or how they want to use it is really interesting because there's just precision on how to do whatever they're doing, whether it's working with engines or pipes or whatever. But I had a question about health. So has there been studies on long-term effects of like wearing a computer on your head all the time? Has that been studied? What do you think about that?
No one will date you.
Yeah, so that's true. Don't wear those headsets outside. You'll get social problem. But in terms of the health, there is not enough data yet. I mean, there's very few of those headsets out. There's very few people using them. We're using them a lot. I still feel my brain okay, but that's not a good example, and it's not synthetic. So I think it's going to take a long time, and it's going to be like the cell phones. You'll get pressure from both sides. It's going to take time. But yeah, I don't think there's any official research that's been done yet that's independent from those manufacturers.
I was wondering, do you guys have any data on people experiencing like eye strain? Like, what are the side effects so far that you've witnessed? Are people pretty happy with the sort of physical experience of it? And I guess just color and contrast and sorts of things. Like people don't have any problems with that.
Today the first thing that people, and personally, something for me, is those devices are fairly heavy.
Okay.
So you feel the strain on your head. And that's the first thing that comes, even before eye strain. The eye strain is there too after a while, but the first thing is that you get those marks and your brain, you have to wear them. They're not comfortable. Past 4 hours, I would say. Past 4 hours, you really feel the excess on your head and it's getting uncomfortable. But again, it's not, there's more to work on it. But yes, they're not yet full. You cannot have them 24 hours on your head.
You'll probably talk about this in the next panel, but there are obviously people who don't react well to the VR, the immersive VR experience. So motion sickness and that kind of nausea is a very real problem in that space, not so much in AR.
AR eye strain is one. You have to calibrate your IPD properly. The headsets, some headsets are not as comfortable as others. We're working, for example, for the Mira. It took us like 3 months to figure out how to realign properly all the optics and the conversions of those optics to be able to reduce eye strain.
Right, so you're not focusing here, focusing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Different plane for convergence planes, and then the focus of your eyes. All those are things are there's a science behind that, but they're going really fast in that. So the ice trend, I think, over time would not be a main issue. But yeah, the headset need to get smaller for being comfortable.
I think we may have time for one more question. Yeah, go ahead.
Considering a lot of you sort of, I guess, not shut down, but similar to that, the social experience in VR, saying AR is a better alternative. I was wondering if any of you could comment on the big push by Apple for animojis, things like that, to sort of like socialize the VR experience, or Oculus partnering with Facebook and all of their social VR. How do you see that field sort of projecting or moving forward?
I can touch on that a little. And so one thing I think that I didn't get to touch on was the fact that we're building a platform that's going to be display agnostic. So it comes down to creating that content. So you want to create that content, especially that interactive piece of it, that can be used across multiple platforms. So I think one thing that we've seen in virtual reality is, you see those moments where that person puts it on and they're kind of entering their own world, and they became isolated in that way. And there is kind of, it just became this, that's what it was known for, right? Then you saw the Pokemon Go with AR, and all of a sudden people are all getting together and it became like a social phenomenon. So how do you recreate that in the virtual reality space? And I think it's been a combination of, now these people have invested and created all this content for VR. How do you make that a social component? Where we find it interesting, where a lot of people are coming to us, like VR content creators, saying, how do we make this social through your hologram displays? And it's that interactive piece. So I think it's kind of finding what we realize is by building this platform where you could upload content, make it interactive, and use it in the different mediums. That, I think, is where we see the combination of being able to use that content in VR for that one experience, but then taking it over and maybe using it on another display on the AR experience. And I think that's kind of where we hope it's going, because there is so much great content out there, and it's kind of figuring out that medium and how do you use it across those different mediums.
I can't help but think of Second Life and the demise of all of those social VR online worlds. It's a challenging space to be in. It's certainly where people, companies are pushing, because that's where the potential market is, and they're trying to build those markets. But it's very, very challenging. I mean, when people want social contact, they have social contact. We have a meeting, we talk. So again, a Luddite's point of view, but it's just a challenging space that many have tried to solve and have not yet been 100% successful.
Yeah, I completely agree, but I also think that there's a difference between being in public and being social. Because, I mean, every day you can be walking around outside, but you might not actually have a meaningful human dialogue or communication with somebody. I think the difference is, like with any form of virtual social interaction, I think there's a certain kind of nostalgia about thinking about how we interacted with people back in the day when there was no Facebook. But in fact, these kinds of social media platforms allow people to communicate with each other more, actually, to a point where they are uncomfortable with the level of exposure they have publicly. So I think the important thing to me is, how do we make that experience more meaningful, and rather than making it more natural, because I think that ship has sailed. I think we already spend majority of our social interactions through some kind of digital media exchange, and I think the intention to make it more spatial and more efficient and more exciting and more productive should be the focus, in my opinion, rather than, in a way, prioritizing one technological paradigm over the other just because it's, in a way, recalls a certain kind of previous experience that we have as humans.
I think that virtual reality for social is going to be, then I'm going to contradict everything I said. No, I'm kidding. It's going to be really big in the sense that to the Second Life experiment, I used Second Life a fair amount of time, and I had an amazing avatar in there, and the social aspect in there was real. You meeting people in very different social constraint. The wings I had in there, the only way to get something that in the real world would be at Burning Man. So those type of experience, you know, and Burning Man is a big investment if you want to go there. So if you want to get into a social environment and still have this extraordinary experience with other people of creativity and exchange, those will happen in VR. And they will be there, and it's so, you know, it's something that's nascent, it's really young, and our technology that we're using today is very primitive to enable like social expressions and like, you know, it's a bit, you know, Facebook Spaces is very scary, you know, your mouth move in such a weird way, it's not there yet, but the technology is evolving fast, and I think there's a lot of value in the VR social experience.
Excellent. Well, sadly, we are out of time, but let's give a round of applause to our panel.